Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be with me today to talk about the invisible threat to your business. If you have any questions or chat about what we are talking today, please click on the chat button and add your questions there. I will get to them as I can through the presentation or definitely get to them at the end. All right, so let's get started. So those of you that don't know me, my name is Lyle Thomas, owner of Professional IT Solutions here in Arroyo Grande. We've been providing IT services, cybersecurity, and compliance services to the small and medium businesses here on the Central Coast since 2002. We have helped protect hundreds of customers and hundreds of thousands of dollars from hackers. So unless we live in a bubble, we all know that cybercrime is getting worse and worse. But not many people are talking about the invisible threats to their business, their reputation, and their revenue. We'd like to introduce you to Bob. He owns a farm equipment company with about 100 computers. He has an MSP or an IT provider who has put in a firewall and is monitoring that firewall. And the MSP notices that someone is trying to get to a website they're not supposed to get to. And the firewall shuts that attempt in the browser to get to the website. It shuts it down. Then they notice another computer going to that website and it gets blocked, and another and another. At this point, the MSP picks up the phone and calls Bob and tells him somebody inside the company is trying to get to this dangerous site that will infect his computers. Bob had to admit that he was the one doing it. He was trying to buy a rare part he needed for one of his tractors. But the link he had was infected. When he tried to access it on his computers, he couldn't. He didn't accept no for an answer. And he was going to try all the computers in the office until he could get through. So the MSP had to tell the owner, had to tell Bob that he was trying to ruin his business and he was out of compliance. See, the compliance in this case was the firewall. If it wasn't for the firewall and the active monitoring by the MSP, Bob's business could have been breached. And he would have had a lot of different problems he would have had to resolve. Exceptional business leaders know that compliance isn't optional, it's essential. Bob's business had cybersecurity, which was the firewall. Bob's business had policies and procedures about clicking on suspicious links. Bob's business had training about cybersecurity. And he still tried to click on that virus link repeatedly. Everything was in place except for compliance. He didn't do what he was supposed to do. He didn't do what he was trained to do. Fortunately, Bob's business had an experienced technology partner who was monitoring his compliance, and they prevented him from successfully circumventing the protections that were put into place. Unfortunately, Bob's story isn't the exception. 75% of CEOs used unapproved applications that haven't been thoroughly approved or vetted by their MSP. The CEOs are not demonstrating compliance at the highest level of the organization. See, Bob knew what to do. He had an IT provider. He had systems in place. He had training. He just didn't do what he knew he was supposed to do. He wasn't in compliance. So average business leaders think that compliance isn't optional, not essential. Don't be average, folks. Please be exceptional when it comes to your internal security and compliance. Compliance failures will completely destroy your business unless you hire an experienced partner who can detect the danger and protect your reputation and revenue. See, if Bob didn't have someone checking his firewall logs, his business could have been ruined. All right, does anybody have a dream car? Very few people actually want to be average. For example, do you want to have an average life, an average home, An average salary or an average car? Probably not. I sure don't. So let's focus on the car right now. What is your dream car? Do you want something powerful and fast like the Dodge Charger Challenger Hellcat? Or something powerful and rugged and fast like a Ford Raptor? Maybe something luxurious like a Rolls Royce? Or maybe something rugged and luxurious like the Land Rover? But the reality is, average people will never own their dream car. It's only exceptional people who end up with that dream car. But even the dream of having a car is a relatively new dream. See, 130 years ago, no one dreamed about having a car because there was no such thing as a car. Until 1886, when Carl Benz patented the first car. Nice car, but I don't think any of us would think about getting in that and taking it down our roads today. So I will give you your dream car on one condition. You can only drive it in 1886. And it might be hard to imagine what it would be like driving in 1886. I want to share with you a little bit what it was like. All right, there were no paved highways, no gas stations, so you had to carry all your gas you needed to get where you were going. There were no mechanics, and your car broke down every 3.5 miles, so you would have to bring your own mechanic. There were no road signs. There were no stop signs. So you could be run over by all kinds of things, right? Horses and buggies and stagecoaches, all sorts of things. There were no lane markings because there were no lanes. There were no auto part stores. So if your car did break down, nothing you could do about it. It wouldn't be very awesome to have your dream car in a world that wasn't designed for cars. The reason I bring this up is because your dream car isn't valuable in a world that isn't filled with much more mundane infrastructure. See, it would be more like driving a rally car through the desert than driving an F1 car down a smooth track. We don't have to imagine what it was like to drive back then. I'll tell you. So let's give them 30 years, maybe actually 33 years from the time the car was first created to 1919. There was something called the Transcontinental Highway. Dwight Eisenhower was tasked by the American military with seeing how long it would take to get from coast to coast to transport stuff, equipment, people, weapons, in case there was a war. So they headed out. There were 81 Army vehicles. They drove from Washington, D.C. to San Francisco. They went 3,250 miles. There were 230 road incidents, breakdowns, flat tires, mud, whatever. 21 people got injured so severely they couldn't make the trip and had to be sent home. And they destroyed 88 wooden bridges as they tried to cross. They had an average of 5 miles an hour. Like that's going to save them if there's a war. And it took 2 months to travel from the East Coast to the West Coast. That's the kind of world we were living in. Before we had infrastructure, before we had compliance for automobiles, before we even had an automobile industry, you could hardly use the car you had because the world wasn't ready for it. Now we are much faster going coast to coast these days. How many people know of the real Cannonball Run? Still happens. It's not just a movie. There is still an ongoing contest. Who can do it the best and the fastest from coast to coast? The current record was set in 2021. Do we remember what happened in 21? Right? There was a thing called COVID. People weren't driving. Cops were at home. So people went nuts. They were breaking the record every couple of days for weeks. So the current record is set by an Audi S6. They went a very prescribed route from a parking garage in Manhattan to a specific corner in Los Angeles. The trip was 2,906 miles, a little bit less than before, but similar. 0 road incidents, 0 injuries, 0 broken bridges, average speed of 110 miles an hour, and the trip only takes 25 hours, 39 minutes. Why? Because we built the rules. We built the infrastructure, built the roads, the gas stations, and we built the systems that make it possible. Now, the one breakdown we have here is the broken speed limit, the entire route, but you get where I'm coming from. So why am I talking about cars when I should be talking about compliance? Here's why. The farther back you look, the farther forward you are likely to see, says Winston Churchill. So what I want to show you today is that if we can understand how the automobile industry developed, how laws, rules, and regulations around the automobile industry developed, and how the infrastructure around the automobile industry developed, we all will understand it because we live in it every single day and we just kind of take it for granted. If you look back and understand, then we can look forward and specifically help other people look forward to see the future of where computer compliance industry is going. We are used to auto compliance, but not computer compliance. And I'm going to make that analogy back and forth. So in 1909, there were 200,000 cars. Just 7 years later, there were over 2.25 million cars in the US. We love cars. We wanted cars. But what happened? It was a rapid change of vehicles, changed the outpace of the creation of safety measures and the laws to regulate that new traffic. Has our rapid technology change in computers outpaced the creation of safety measures and laws to regulate it? Yes. This process happens with all new industries, not just cars, not just computers. And the computer industry is kind of new. If you watch the development of the auto industry, you can watch the development of the computer and technology industry. So how long did it take them? The first speed limit, it took them 15 years to put in the first speed limit. 17 years before the first driver's license. That same year, the first license plate was issued. This was something you wrote up at home and it stuck on the car. 1908 was the first driver's license exam, which means people were driving for 5 years without any idea if you were able to drive. 1914 was the first traffic light, thinking that maybe it's good to tell people when to stop and when to go. 1915 was the first stop sign. 1924 were the first road stripes saying, hey, stay on your side of the lane. And it wasn't until 1940 before we had the first paved interstate. This is a slow development, but it is worse because these are the firsts. You might think that once it came out, it spread everywhere, but it didn't. Okay, in 1903 was the first driver's license in Missouri. 1952 was the first driver's exam. There were people that grew up, drove for 40 years, died, and never had to take a driver's exam. We are seeing this in the computer industry. Some states have requirements, some states don't. Some people are doing things for years, yet other people don't even know it exists. And they sure don't think it should be required. Right? Now, seatbelt laws, right? The first seatbelts took 60 years after the first car was sold. It would be a good idea to keep people in their cars, right? It took them 29 years to say, put it on. Manufacturers had to install seatbelts for 30 years before people were required to use them. Seatbelt laws are still state by state. In New Hampshire, it's still optional, surprisingly. We continue to see this. 1973 were the first airbags. They also lowered the national speed limit to 55. But it wasn't until 88 until airbags became standard. Do you remember that in 1977, there was such a revolt about airbags that most car companies stopped making them and putting them into cars? Manufacturers were trying to keep people safe, but people didn't want it. As an IT provider, I have offered to put in cybersecurity solutions to keep a client safe, but we've been told they didn't want it. And it wasn't until 1998, 25 years before we had mandated airbags. First airbags were in a 1973 Oldsmobile Tornado. I didn't know a car that big had needed airbags. Look what has been added in the past 25 years, right? Front, side, and rear airbags, curtain airbags, as well as sensors detect and adjust to the passenger size, seat location, seatbelt use, and severity of crash. It goes slow. It goes slow. It's a definite struggle. Seems ridiculous. And then what happens? It accelerates and seems completely normal. Okay, 1910 was the first drunk driving law. It took 14 years after building cars that we decided maybe people shouldn't drive when hammered. 1988 was the first federal drunk driving law. Took that long for people in the government to think maybe it'd be a good idea. Took more than 75 years to outlaw drunk driving. Interesting fact, in 1985, it was still legal to drive from Florida to the Canadian border in Idaho and drink the entire route and not be doing anything wrong. Do you know anyone that is driving their business like this now? There's a big gap between we should do it and we have to do it. And for some people, they won't do it until they have to do it. It doesn't mean it wouldn't have been a really smart idea. First parking garage was in 1918. 1935 was the first parking meter, which was a bad day for all of us. And complex parking rules, restrictions, and regulations are now an integral part of modern day life. I want you to remember, is computer security compliance, cybersecurity complex? Of course it is. And so are the parking rules. All right. How many of us have gotten a ticket for parking because we couldn't figure out what the rules were? Confusion makes compliance difficult, if not impossible. This is how business owners feel about compliance. I know that. Problem with cybersecurity compliance is it isn't or hasn't become an integral part of modern business yet. We have dealt with the complexity of automobiles and parking compliance for so long, we don't think about it, but we can't avoid it either. Just like we can't avoid cybersecurity and compliance. The first cell phone was 1973. 2001 was the first cell phone driving law. The first text message was in 1992. It was only 15 years later the first texting and driving law was instituted. Things were getting faster. First text message was sent by Neil Papworth, and that message simply said, "Merry Christmas." We need to make compliance and cybersecurity seem like an inevitable and normal as in business, as normal as in vehicle regulations. So, what are the risks for noncompliance? All right. What happens is you get caught drunk driving or speeding or breaking any of the other driving rules. Now, what happens? You hurt someone or damage someone's property and you could be sued. That's one of the things. You have paperwork. You may have to fill out insurance, DMV paperwork, police reports, and answer questions. Fines isn't the only thing, right? You might get a ticket, but the lawsuit for the person you ran into is going to be way more severe and cost more than the ticket you paid for running into that person, breaking their leg, and sending them to the hospital. Definitely going to have a loss of customers. and the loss of reputation. Right? MGM and these other big companies, when they experience a breach, the FBI or FTC or somebody might investigate, and they could say that the business did everything they could, and it just happened. But if you and I, the regular people, have a breach and it hits the news, the general public isn't going to care that we did everything right. They're just going to see that we had a breach and that we messed up. They don't really care if it was handled appropriately. They're going to lose trust in our businesses. You might get a nasty email from your competitor telling you thank you and stealing your customers. Okay, reduced revenue, reduce customers. You are going to lose the customers that you have, and those that you might have done business with aren't going to do business with you anymore. Increased costs of dealing with a hack, even for a regular person. You have to pay a deductible. You have to pay insurance premiums. You have to pay for cleanup costs. The stress and exhaustion, add everything up in this list, add the news, your employees, and everything you have to do. That is the cost of running into that person. Traffic violations do run over into your business. They ran into a football program and a college. I know it's not related to anybody that's attending today, but things do happen. Georgia just won a national championship, yet they were dealing with players that could not follow basic traffic laws. A week prior to when this article was released, one of his freshman players was ticketed for driving 88 miles an hour in a 55 zone. Just hours before that day, one of his other freshman players pleaded guilty to driving 99 in a 45. That was the 11th traffic violation in the previous 6 months by his players. At that 6-month mark, another one of his current players was racing a former Bulldog when their cars left the road, hit a tree, and they died. He was drinking over the blood alcohol level. This person's football program, his team, the university is being damaged because people can't follow simple driving rules. It's damaged the coaches, the school's reputation, who they weren't actually doing anything wrong. Let's bring that back to us. You and I in our businesses may be doing everything right. But if just one employee, one person, doesn't follow the security processes put into place, they could cause the breach. And you as the business owner are going to be liable for that. Scary thought. Okay, how do you handle risk? What's your response? We can ignore it. Right? It is foolish and dangerous, but we can do it. To avoid it is unproductive and unrealistic. How do you avoid cybersecurity risks? Can't really unplug your computer. No internet, no email. Can't go to a website. You won't be able to function as a business. This is difficult to accept it, but we have to. We can reduce it. How, you may ask? Through compliance with good security. It's complex, but it is feasible. All right, we can transfer the risk. This is possible with compliance. You just go out and get insurance as long as you are compliant, but you can't get insurance if you aren't compliant. Okay, we cannot eliminate it. Unless you unplug your computer, compliance and security requirements are going to be here. And this isn't an easy fix, folks. I can't sell you an easy solution that this is going to do it all. Can't guarantee it. It is going to take some work on your behalf and mine. We have to work together to accomplish this. So why are we talking about this? Compliance with cybersecurity guidelines and governmental regulators feels less essential and more voluntary because the technology is relatively new and constantly changing. We are used to compliance with cars, but we are not used to it with computers. So average business leaders believe that compliance is optional, not essential. Exceptional business leaders know that compliance isn't optional, but it is essential. Well, let's get back to your dream car. I want you to think about what your dream car is and what your dream car can do for you. And I want you to think about what you would do for your dream car. The first thing you want it to do is actually work. You want it to be safe and reliable. So, what do we do to make cars safe and reliable? We add seatbelts, analog brakes, crash sensors, airbags, roll cages, safety glasses, lane change warnings, tire pressure alerts, mirrors, brake lights, accident monitoring, adaptive cruise control, wipers that come on automatically when it starts to rain, lights that come on when it gets dark. Most of the features of a new car are actually safety features, and most of the new features they add to cars are actually safety features as well. The reason that this is important is there are 7 million car accidents in the US every day each year. How many cybersecurity attacks happen each day each year in the US? Almost 50,000 people die in collisions annually. And those safety features are absolutely crucial. But even with those safety features, you're still going to buckle up and you'll still drive carelessly so nothing happens to your sweet ride. And that is called compliance. You are actually using the features that are there. Okay, nobody believes that they will be in a wreck when they leave the house in the morning, but you still put on your seatbelt. You don't expect a life threatening crash, but you still buckle up. You don't wake up in the morning as a business owner thinking you are about to be a victim of a cyber attack, but you should still comply with the stuff we're talking about. You don't expect it to happen, but you still buckle up. What else are we going to do? You want it to be reliable. So let's say your car breaks down, your dream car breaks down. What are you going to do? You're going to watch a YouTube video and try to fix it yourself? That might be a bad idea. Are you going to go to AutoZone and find the cheapest part you can find? Are you going to take a course for years to become a certified mechanic so you can take care of it yourself? Probably not. If you're like me, you're going to find a certified mechanic that specializes in your particular type of car. You're going to get the oil change. You're going to check the brakes. You're going to check the tires, the pressure, rotate your tires, check the filters and fluids. If a warning light comes on, you're not going to ignore it. You're going to get it diagnosed and fixed. You're going to get it washed and detailed. Your spouse is going to get very jealous about how you treat your car. You treat it better than you treat her. But you care more about just safety and reliability. You want your car to run smoothly and make sure it doesn't get stolen, right? You care about security. In the United States, a car is stolen every 41 seconds. That means 65 cars will be stolen during this presentation. Hopefully, yours isn't one of them. The worst city for car thefts? Bakersfield and Denver, Colorado. The most commonly stolen vehicle is a Honda Civic or a Ford F-150. Now, just to be clear, why Honda Civics are the most commonly stolen vehicle, they are the most common vehicle people drive. More people drive Honda Civics than anything else. More people drive more Ford F-150s than any other truck. So when a small business thinks they aren't going to get hacked because they're small, they will actually get hacked because they're a small business and there's so many of them. There's more opportunity to break into a small business than others. It's the opposite of what most people think. It is a reality. People steal the most common cars. Does that make sense? So if you want to be safe, you don't drive a Honda Civic, you don't drive an F-150, and you don't live in Bakersfield or Denver, but you live in Harrisburg, Virginia, where the least amount of vehicles are stolen. And we don't want to do that either. So what else are we going to do? Going to have all the anti-theft devices. You're going to have an alarm, GPS tracker, auto locking doors, remote immobilizer, and you might even buy a club. But doesn't it seem stupid that people can steal your car without a key that they can get past the club? The answer is yes, they can. The club works because when someone sees your car and sees the club and then looks to that car next to you, they're going to steal that car because it is just easier. Okay. And that is all we're trying to do with your cybersecurity. It's get people to add just one more layer of security so that it isn't worth a hacker screwing with you so they go on to the next person. Do we just wait for security to work? No. You roll up the windows, lock the doors, take the keys with you, set the alarm, and you hide the valuables. At night, you park your car in a well-lit area. At home, you park in the garage. And yet, you'd never leave your car in a bad neighborhood. You're going to be vigilant and not be complacent. You don't want anything to happen to your dream car. All of these things you do to keep your car safe, that's called compliance. Joe Santos from the Automotive Journal says, if you want to keep your car safe, there isn't any one solution that will keep a thief from stealing it. If a thief wants your car, they will find a way to get it. But it is better to add multiple layers of security. If a hacker wants your business, then the answer is yes. However, it is better to add multiple layers of cybersecurity. He goes on to say to lock your car, turn on the alarm, steering wheel lock, GPS in order to keep the car right where you left it. Using a steering wheel lock could work, but it's far better when combined with other anti-theft devices. But even with all these safety and security features, we all know it's possible to get in an accident. And there are a lot of bad drivers on the road, and we just can't control every variable. If someone really wants to steal your car, they will. So what do we need? We need insurance. First car insurance was in 1898. They were on it, right? 1925 was the first car insurance law. But it wasn't until 1970 that most states required insurance. It was 72 years before car insurance was mandatory throughout the country. Is mandatory cyber insurance probably coming? The answer is yes, for sure. Is it coming tomorrow? Probably not. But we can see the future by seeing the past. And everything happens faster now than it did in the early 1900s. Now, it says 72 years before car insurance was mandatory throughout the country, but there isn't an asterisk there, right? Still not required in New Hampshire. Right. They are getting hurt up there because they don't have to wear a seatbelt. So now you need insurance. You want your insurance to replace your car if it's stolen and to repair it if it is damaged in an accident. But you know, your biggest financial risk is the medical cost and lawsuits, not property damage. So you want insurance to protect you from the liability of hurting someone on the road, collision, and liability, not some cheap policy from an unknown insurance company. They will pay for a tow truck if you get a flat tire or pay for the car rental when yours is getting repaired. Cheap insurance won't get you very far if something bad happens. They aren't getting the general online because they have bad credit. You get the good stuff to protect you if something bad happens. This is the same way about cyber insurance. So now it's time for compliance. When you get your dream car, you're not thinking about complying with all the laws and rules. You can't even buy a car without insurance, paying taxes, license fees, and registration. You have to do all that before you get it off the lot. There are thousands of local and state regulations for owning and driving a car. I found some ridiculous ones. Alabama, no driving while blindfolded. Makes sense, but why do they have to tell anybody that? Arkansas, don't drink your car. Don't honk your horn anywhere that serves cold drinks and sandwiches after 9. That law doesn't really make sense. Think about it. You can't honk your horn at any time by a restaurant that serves drinks and sandwiches after 9, or you can't honk your horn after 9 o'clock at a place that serves that. This is messy. Okay, one more. Alaska. It is illegal to tie a dog to the roof of your car. This means people did this and they had to be told no. What else do? We have seatbelts, speed limits, traffic lights, emissions testing. You have to get a driver's license, which you didn't have to do 50 years ago. Now we have to stand in a long line at the DMV. And the list goes on forever. If you ignore the laws, you have to pay big fines and you could lose your dream car. If you get too many tickets or accidents, you may lose your insurance and your driver's license. Or your insurance may become so expensive you can't afford to drive your car anymore. Can you do something so bad that your cyber insurance will get canceled and you can't get it any longer? And the answer is absolutely. That's why compliance is so important. Compliance isn't something we think about it, but it is everywhere and affects everything. Compliance isn't something we think about, but it is everywhere. And it can affect everything in our life and on the roads and the highway and in our business. Safety, reliability, security, insurance, compliance. These 4 layers are crucial when it comes to owning and driving your dream car. And the same 4 elements are crucial when it comes to managing your business technology. If you want to know how to manage the evolution of the information technology, just follow the same principle you use to manage your cars. The evolution of the automobile industry is very similar to the evolution that we see in computer and information technology today. The number one thing is safety and reliability. We went through it with cars. Now we're going through it with our computers. You want your computers to run smooth. You want your email to be reliable. You don't want downtime on your servers, just like you don't want your car to be down and their systems crashing. The proposed backup that we proposed to a prospective client a few months ago, we were told it's too expensive and unnecessary. We come to find out a couple weeks later, one of their vendors was in their system installing an update to an application. The technician was new, and this was the first time he was doing this work on his own. In the process, the tech eliminated thousands of records. This was a very costly and time-consuming fix because there wasn't a backup. Cars are like computers. Computers are like cars. We deal with all kinds of compliance, safety, security, and reliability and insurance with our cars. And now for our computers. Exceptional business leaders know that compliance isn't optional, it's essential, because there is no reliability without compliance. Security. The average business leaders think they're too small to be hacked. But exceptional leaders know that small and medium sized businesses are very likely to experience a cyber attack. 43% of all cyber attacks target small and medium sized business. You are not too small. You're just too small to be on the news. That's true. Okay, compliance can seem boring, complex, and confusing. So let's focus on something that's an essential and more interesting part. 60% of small and medium businesses go out of business within 6 months of a cyber attack. The average cost of a data breach is $3.8 million. That includes small businesses, folks. We don't get a pass on this. Again, it's not very realistic for us to just unplug our computers, not go to the internet, not get email, right? Just can't do it. A car is stolen every 41 seconds. There's a ransomware attack every 39 seconds. Security is like locking your car. It doesn't stop the bad guys, but if it's good enough, they may move on to an easier target. Have you verified that your IT provider is doing ransomware proof backups? Something to think about. $133,000 is the average ransomware attack. When they ask for a ransom, that is the average cost. Can you afford that? There's no silver bullet solution with cybersecurity. A layer defense is the only viable defense. A security system with several layers is difficult to hack. Even though your data is targeted, getting through the many tiers of security will be a hassle. 90% of all cyber attacks start with email phishing. Exceptional business leaders know that compliance is essential because without it, there is no compliance. Insurance, gotta have it. The only true secure system is one that is powered off, cast in a block of concrete, and sealed in a lead lined room with armed guards. Okay, the first virus was in 1988. The first cybersecurity insurance policy was 1997. Cyber insurance isn't new, folks. It's 25 years old. But you can see that things are moving a lot faster than they did with the cars. 32% of companies have cyber liability insurance. Don't be average, folks. Be exceptional. And cyber attacks come from outside your company. Compliance issues and risks come from inside your company. Okay, without compliance, there is no insurance. Insurance isn't enough because it can't restore your competition. It can't restore your reputation, restore your customers, replace your revenue. Okay, it's a myth that if you buy cyber insurance, you don't have to do anything in your business. That's not true. Most cyber liability policies, when you apply for it, they give you a form to fill out. And if you say that you're doing something and you're not, and you experience a breach, they're probably going to investigate to make sure you were not negligent before they decide to do their claim. And if they find out that you aren't doing what you said you were or what you committed to do, they're not going to pay that claim. They may actually turn around and sue you for breach of contract. Okay? Small businesses are less prepared than a large business. We have less money to invest to get it right. We don't have teams in our businesses to do all this, but we still process the same types of data that large businesses do. Our risks are the employee information, customer data, Federal Trade Commission guidelines, credit card processing, and many, many more. Our cyber requirements are local, state, and federal laws, credit card processing rules. We have a lot of us have contracts with our vendors, customers, insurance, and investors. Then complying with our internal policies and procedures. Okay, we've got compliance requirements for HIPAA for medical, CMMC for defense contractors, GDPR for anybody that lives in Europe and we do services for. We have to comply with them. Department of Commerce, PCI for the banking. And there are a lot of things that your IT people need to do to keep you safe. Okay, Robert Herjavec, America should get ready. Cybersecurity regulations will soon be coming to the US, and that's a good thing. He firmly believes that the US will pass similar regulation to the GDPR in Europe. Okay, for the last 4 or 5 years, all of Europe must comply with the same laws. We don't have that yet, but it's coming. 94% of all malware attacks are initiated by email. Do you have email policies and procedures yet? And does your staff know what to do? It takes companies on average, according to an FBI report, 197 days to detect a breach. Once discovered, it takes an additional 68 days on average to contain that breach. Okay, prevention is not sufficient. You're going to have to invest in detection because you want to be notified when a breach happens as fast as possible. However, companies who can detect a breach within 30 days can save an average of $1 million. Okay, don't be average, folks. Be exceptional here. Exceptional business leaders know that compliance is essential because every computer is a technology company now. We can't get around it. Safety, security, insurance, compliance. That will help your business look like this in shambles. Okay, compliance failures will completely destroy your business, folks, unless you hire an exceptional partner who can detect the danger and protect your reputation and revenue. Computers and IT support and cybersecurity and compliance isn't the same as it used to be. If you're using an IT provider that hasn't kept up with the risks and challenges of the modern day internet, if you have any concerns or any thoughts, touch base with me, please. Take a picture of that barcode. Hey, I would love to offer you a free risk assessment. The value of this could be between $3,000 and $10,000, depending on the size of your organization. Even if you have an IT company that you have been using for years, take me up on this. Your current IT company probably won't know that we are there, that you're running this scan. But if they do know and they notify you, that is a really good thing to find out. Okay. It doesn't look like there are any questions. Is anybody that does have a question? Please put it in the chat. All right, folks. Thank you for your time. Feel free to call if you ever need anything, and have a great day.